Welcome to Beyond the Unknown. We're diving deep today into a report that blends history and literature and does a touch of the paranormal. It's episode 27. Did a 19th century author predict Trump's 2024 return?
Fascinating premise for sure. It all centers around this author from the 1800s, Ingersoll Lockwood. He wrote a couple novels, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and then this other one, 1900, The Last President. And they seem to have these uncanny parallels to Donald Trump's life and his recent political comeback.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not be totally familiar with this Ingersoll Lockwood, he wasn't just some nobody writing in an attic somewhere. He was a pretty well-respected author, even a former diplomat. So he definitely understood politics and power, which makes these parallels even more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Trump's political journey, it hasn't exactly been normal, right? He started as a businessman and this reality TV personality, and then he wins the presidency in 2016, often campaigning as this populist outsider, appealing to people who were just feeling totally disillusioned with the political establishment.
And after a pretty wild first term, he loses in 2020. But then, against a lot of predictions, he wins again in 2024. Back to the White House.
Yeah, it's in that context that Lockwood's books start to feel almost prophetic, like his novel 1900. It actually describes this political outsider who wins the presidency during a time of national unrest, very similar to the climate surrounding both of Trump's victories. And this outsider president, his win leads to all this economic and social turmoil.
And then there's that phrase from Lockwood's book, The Last President. Trump even used that phrase himself on the campaign trail, suggesting that he might be the last president if he was reelected.
It really is striking, but it gets even more interesting when you look at Lockwood's other novel, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey.
Right. The main character has the same name as Trump's son, Barron, and his mentor in the book is named Don. I mean, come on.
And if that wasn't strange enough, young Baron Trump, his journey begins in Russia, which of course makes everyone think about the complicated and strained relationship between the U.S. and Russia that we've seen in recent years.
So are we just looking at a bunch of coincidences here? Or is there something more going on? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it?
It really makes you want to connect the dots. I mean, when you look at the specific details in Lockwood's writing, it's more than just names and basic plot points.
Exactly. The report actually points out this one passage in 1900 where the president is dealing with all this backlash. For his controversial immigration policies, it's almost like he saw it coming. The debates and strong reactions around Trump's proposals for the border wall and his whole approach to immigration.
Oh, yeah. And in Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, there's this scene where young Baron, he's wandering through this extravagant palace full of gold and opulence. It's hard not to picture Trump Tower and that whole image of Trump's wealth and over-the-top lifestyle.
Yeah, those details really add another layer to this whole thing. It almost makes you wonder if Lockwood was tapping into something beyond imagination.
I mean, it's like he was seeing the future, which brings us to this concept that might sound like it's straight out of sci-fi. Remote viewing.
Remote viewing.
Yeah, the idea that some people, they might be able to perceive events or places that are distant in time or space.
So like a mental time machine.
Basically.
But how does that connect to Lockwood and his seemingly prophetic novels?
Well, back in the 1970s, the CIA, they started this program called the Stargate Project. It was all about exploring the potential of remote viewing. They got all these people who said they had psychic abilities and put them through all these tests.
Wow. And what happened? Did they find any evidence to support it?
Well, the findings were, let's just say, intriguing. Some of the participants, like Ingo Swann and Pat Price, they could describe remote locations and even future events with a level of accuracy that was pretty hard to just brush off as coincidence.
Wait, so you're saying the CIA actually took this seriously? Like they actually believed people could see into the future?
Well, they put a lot of resources into it, so they must have seen something there. Now, whether they ever actually proved remote viewing exists, that's still up for debate. But it does make you wonder, could Lockwood have had similar abilities? Was he tapping into future events and then writing them into his stories, maybe without even realizing it?
That's a crazy thought.
Yeah.
I mean, if the CIA was looking into remote viewing, who's to say other people haven't done it too?
Exactly. And when you see all those similarities between Lockwood's novels and Trump's life, you have to wonder if he was a remote viewer. Maybe consciously, maybe not.
Of course, some people will say it's all just coincidence, that we're making connections where there aren't any. But it's hard to ignore how many similarities there are, especially with those specific details we talked about earlier.
It really does push the boundaries of what we think is possible. If Lockwood could somehow predict things, that happened over a century later. What does that tell us about the limits of human perception and how we understand time?
That's what blows my mind about all this. It makes you question everything you thought you knew.
It makes you wonder if there's more to reality than we can see. And it raises another question. If Lockwood saw Trump's rise to power, what else did he see? Are there other clues hidden in his books, just waiting for us to figure them out?
Like a literary treasure hunt, trying to unlock the secrets Lockwood left behind.
Exactly. And it's not just about Trump either. It's about the bigger picture. If remote viewing is real, if people can really tap into information beyond our normal reality, what does that mean for how we understand the world and our place in it?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. Whether you believe it or not, this report on Ingersoll Lockwood, it really makes you think outside the box.
It really does. It makes you consider these possibilities. That might seem crazy at first, but they could change everything.
I mean, if Lockwood really was a remote viewer, even if he didn't know it, it raises so many questions about time, perception, the potential of the human mind.
Right. It makes you wonder if maybe we all have that ability somewhere inside us. Maybe it's just about figuring out how to access it, to be more aware and see beyond our everyday reality.
That's a really interesting thought. It's like saying the future isn't set in stone, that maybe we have more power to shape our own destinies than we think.
It's kind of empowering, but also a little scary to think we could actually influence the future.
Well, we've definitely given everyone a lot to think about today. I think in a world that's becoming more and more complex and unpredictable, it's important to keep an open mind and explore ideas that challenge what we think we know.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest discoveries, they often come from people who question everything and go beyond what's considered accepted knowledge.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Ingersoll Lockwood and the idea of prophetic fiction. I hope you found it interesting and that it gave you something to think about.
If you want to learn more about remote viewing and how the government explored it, check out episode 13 book review, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. It's a look at how science, espionage, and the paranormal all come together.
And until next time, keep exploring the unknown. And remember, always question, always wonder, and always keep an open mind. Who knows what amazing things you might find just beyond the ordinary.